Have you ever felt like life just keeps knocking you down? Like no matter what you do, things go from bad to worse. Well, today we re-dive into one of the most incredible comeback stories ever told. The story of a young man named Joseph. His journey is a powerful reminder that even in our darkest moments, there can be a greater plan at work. Our story begins with Joseph, a young man with a very big family. He was one of 12 brothers, but he was his father, Jacob's favorite. To show his affection, Jacob gave Joseph a stunning, multicolored coat. Now, you can imagine how his older brothers felt about this. They were already jealous. But it gets worse. Joseph started having these vivid dreams. In one, he saw his brothers, sheaves of wheat, bowing down to his. In another, the sun, moon, and 11 stars were bowing to him. He probably should have kept these dreams to himself, but he was young and excited, so he told his brothers. This was the last straw. Their jealousy turned into deep-seated hatred. They saw him as arrogant and full of himself. One day, when the brothers were out tending the flocks, Jacob sent Joseph to check on them. Seeing him approach from a distance, they saw their chance. Their first thought was to kill him, but the oldest brother, Reuben, convinced them to just throw him into an empty well, secretly planning to rescue him later. But before Reuben could return, another brother, Judah, had a different idea. Why not make some money off him? He suggested. So, when a caravan of traders heading to Egypt passed by, they sold their own brother into slavery for 20 pieces of silver. To cover their tracks, they dipped Joseph's beautiful coat in goat's blood and took it back to their father, Jacob. Seeing the torn, bloody coat, Jacob was heartbroken, believing a wild animal had killed his favorite son. He mourned for years, inconsolable. Meanwhile, Joseph was taken to Egypt, a foreign land where he knew no one and didn't speak the language. He was sold to a man named Potiphar, who was the captain of Pharaoh's guard. You might think this is the end of the road for Joseph, but here's where things start to turn. Joseph was a hard worker, honest and capable. God was with him, and everything he did prospered. Potiphar noticed this, and soon put Joseph in charge of his entire household. Everything was under Joseph's management. Potiphar didn't have to worry about a thing. Joseph had risen from a slave to a trusted manager, but his trials were far from over. Potiphar's wife took notice of the handsome young man. Day after day, she tried to seduce him, but Joseph refused. He told her, "My master has entrusted me with everything in his house. How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" One day, when no one else was home, she grabbed him by his cloak, insisting he lie with her. Joseph fled, but he left his cloak in her hand. Furious and scorned, she used the cloak as evidence, falsely accusing Joseph of attacking her. When Potiphar came home, she told him her fabricated story. Enraged, Potiphar had Joseph thrown into the royal prison. It seems so unfair, doesn't it? He did the right thing, and he still ended up in a worse situation. From a pit to slavery, and now to a dungeon. It looked like rock bottom. But even in the darkness of the prison, Joseph wasn't alone. The Bible says the Lord was with Joseph and showed him kindness. Soon, the chief jailer saw the same integrity and competence that Potiphar had seen. He put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners. It was a repeat of what happened in Potiphar's house. Joseph was once again running the show, even while being a prisoner himself. 2 years passed. Then, 2 of Pharaoh's own officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, offended the king and were thrown into the same prison. One morning, Joseph noticed they were both looking dejected. He asked them what was wrong, and they told him they each had a disturbing dream but had no one to interpret it. Joseph, trusting in God, said, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." The cupbearer went first. He dreamed of a vine with 3 branches that budded, blossomed, and produced grapes. He squeezed the grapes into Pharaoh's cup and gave it to him, Joseph explained. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will restore you to your position. Then Joseph made a simple request. When all goes well with you, remember me and mention me to Pharaoh, so I can get out of this prison. Next was the baker. He dreamed he had 3 baskets of bread on his head, but birds were eating from the top basket. The interpretation for him was not so good. Joseph told him, "The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will have you executed." And just as Joseph had said, 3 days later, on Pharaoh's birthday, the cupbearer was restored to his position, and the baker was executed. But did the cupbearer remember Joseph? No. He completely forgot about the young man who had given him hope in prison. 2 more long years went by for Joseph, waiting in that dungeon. Can you imagine the disappointment? He must have felt so forgotten. But his story was about to take its most dramatic turn yet. One night, Pharaoh himself had 2 very troubling dreams. In the first, he saw 7 fat, healthy cows come out of the Nile River, followed by 7 skinny, ugly cows that ate the healthy ones but remained just as skinny. In the second dream, he saw 7 healthy heads of grain growing on one stalk, followed by 7 thin, scorched heads of grain that swallowed up the healthy ones. Pharaoh woke up disturbed. He called for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt, but no one could interpret the dreams. It was then, and only then, that the chief cupbearer finally remembered Joseph. He told Pharaoh about the Hebrew slave in prison who could interpret dreams. Immediately, Pharaoh sent for Joseph. He was quickly cleaned up, given fresh clothes, and brought before the most powerful man in the world. Pharaoh told Joseph his dreams. Without hesitation, Joseph replied, "The interpretation does not come from me, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." He explained that the 2 dreams meant the same thing. God was showing Pharaoh what was about to happen. The 7 healthy cows and 7 healthy heads of grain represented 7 years of great abundance and prosperity throughout Egypt. But the 7 skinny cows and thin heads of grain represented 7 years of severe famine that would follow, a famine so terrible it would consume all the abundance. But Joseph didn't stop there. He gave Pharaoh a plan. He advised him to find a wise and discerning man and put him in charge. This man should appoint officials to collect 1/5 of the harvest during the 7 years of plenty and store it in cities. This grain would be a reserve for the 7 years of famine, saving the country from ruin. Pharaoh and his officials were blown away by this wisdom. Pharaoh looked at Joseph and said, "Can we find anyone like this man? One in whom is the Spirit of God?" He turned to Joseph and declared, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." Just like that, Joseph, the slave, the prisoner, was made the 2nd most powerful man in Egypt. He was 30 years old. He went from the pit to the palace. Pharaoh gave him a new name, a wife, and his own signet ring. For the next 7 years, Joseph traveled throughout Egypt, overseeing the storage of enormous amounts of grain. Then, just as he had foreseen, the 7 years of abundance ended, and the famine began. It wasn't just in Egypt. It spread over the whole region. But thanks to Joseph's foresight, Egypt had food. People from all the surrounding countries came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph. And who do you think eventually showed up? Desperate for food? His 10 older brothers. The famine had hit their home in Canaan hard. Jacob sent them to Egypt to buy grain, keeping only his youngest son, Benjamin, at home. When the brothers arrived, they were brought before this powerful Egyptian governor. They bowed down low before him, their faces to the ground. They had no idea they were bowing to the very brother they had sold into slavery 20 years earlier. Joseph's childhood dream was coming true right before his eyes. Joseph recognized them immediately, but he kept his identity a secret. He spoke to them harshly through an interpreter, accusing them of being spies. To test them, he put them through a series of trials, demanding they bring their youngest brother, Benjamin, to prove their story. He wanted to see if they had changed, if they were still the same cruel, jealous men who had betrayed him After a heart-wrenching ordeal that tested their character and forced them to confront their past guilt, Joseph finally saw that they were changed men. Judah even offered to become a slave in Benjamin's place to spare their father more pain. Seeing their genuine remorse and love for their family, Joseph could no longer control his emotions. He sent everyone out of the room and broke down, weeping so loudly that the entire palace could hear. He looked at his terrified brothers and said, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" They were speechless with fear, but he told them to come closer. "Do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me. Here," he said, "because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." He explained how his journey, all the pain and suffering, was part of a divine plan to save their entire family from the famine. It's one of the most powerful moments of forgiveness in all of literature. He saw the bigger picture. What they had intended for evil, God had used for good. Joseph sent them back with provisions and wagons to bring their father, Jacob, and all their families to live in Egypt, where he could provide for them. The reunion with his father and his full reconciliation with his brothers is a deeply moving end to this epic saga. The story of Joseph is a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and faith. It shows that even when we face betrayal, injustice, and despair, our story isn't over. There can be a purpose in our pain that we can't see at the moment. It's a powerful lesson that a bad chapter doesn't mean it's a bad book. Thanks for watching this incredible story unfold with me today. If you found this inspiring, please hit that like button, subscribe for more stories like this, and share your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time!